Welcome to the Learning to Die podcast.
I'm Ian Dunican.
And I'm Kieran O'Regan.
How do I live when I know I must die?
We explore areas of philosophy, psychology, martial arts, culture, existential risk, history, society, religion, science, and anything else that seems of interest and relevance to answering that question.
We can only hope that some of what we learn might be of benefit to you too. Namaste, sapiens. Welcome back to the Learning to Die podcast. Today is a very interesting episode for me because it's kind of came out of nowhere, and it's kind of a follow-on from the Ukraine episode that myself and Kieran did maybe some 6 weeks ago, probably now, maybe more, and where we kind of discussed Ukraine at the early stages. And as you would have seen on the news, the Ukraine crisis has escalated, and today we are April 12th. April 12th for our guest today, Tommy, and April 12th/13th for Kieran, nearly at midnight here in Ireland, and it's Wednesday the 13th of April for me in Western Australia. When I get this episode out as soon as possible, it will be a priority this week. But today we are joined by our guest who goes by the name of Tommy Dollar.
That's right.
Is that your real name, Tommy? Is that what is that the name you're gonna give to us today, or is that a fake name?
Yeah, we could go with that name. My name is Tommy. My last name is not Dollar, but we'll go with that today. All right. Well,
it just says Tommy Dollar on his Zoom account, and if you follow Tommy on Twitter, it says Tommy Dollar. So yeah, Tommy Dollar. It's a good name, actually. It sounds like I don't know, like some sort of Western character.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm joined today by Tommy and my ever-present co-host at the midnight hour, Mr. Kieran, the Quarrelsome Life. How are you, Kieran?
Great. I was looking forward to this conversation. It's as you said, it came out of the blue when you mentioned it last week as a possibility, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do this." This sounds like very, as you said, timely, and seems like a very insightful topic to be discussing.
Yeah, and I'm really keen to understand, Tommy, the driving factors behind your decision today. So the reason we had Tommy on is Tommy is, in a number of weeks, Tommy is bound for Ukraine to fight on the side of the Ukrainian people against the Russian army. But before we get into that, Tommy, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself, where you grew up, what your interests were, and obviously you've got some military experience, so it'd be good if you could bring us maybe on a little bit of a journey through how that started.
Yeah, let's go on a journey. The journey starts now. Look, growing up, I grew up in a what used to be a farm country or a farm county in the middle of California. It's now turned into a probably one of the largest cities in California. However, they don't have shit there, right? It's just there's a bunch of people, a bunch of chain restaurants, but it went from being a farm city county to now being like the center of California. Now everybody wants to live there because it's right in the middle of San Francisco and LA. But growing up, I wouldn't say that I grew up poor, but I grew up very modest, and my parents were not together. They had separated before I could even remember. So I lived with my grandmother for a long time. And I really wanted to live with my mom, but I couldn't because she was busy working. So interestingly enough, my grandmother worked overnight, so I was a young child spending the nights alone. And in the daytime, my grandmother would be sleeping because she was somewhat of like working in a nursing home, and they needed her overnight. So I spent a lot of time just by myself. So I didn't have direction growing up. My dad kind of just went off and did his thing. But he's not a bad guy, right? It just didn't work out with him and my mom. He's not a bad guy at all. I'm in contact with him a lot now that I've come back, and we get along very well. So it's not that he was a deadbeat or anything. They just didn't work out, right? So growing up, like I said, I come from a city that didn't have much as far as entertainment or keeping us busy. So I grew up kind of running in the streets. and I'm 35 or 34 or 35, and so back in the 90s and the early 2000s, I wasn't in a gang, but I hung out with people that were affiliated with gangs. So I wasn't a violent. I didn't grow up violent. I grew up kind of just like I don't give a fuck. No one's gonna stop me. No one has stopped me. So I'm just gonna like freshman, sophomore year where I was, 14, 15 years old in high school, I kind of got stuck into like drugs, right? So it started off smoking weed, and then it kind of escalated because of what was popular in Fresno at the time. There's a lot of labor workers, a lot of blue collar guys, a lot of truck drivers, carpenters, construction workers. So we ended up, man, it's crazy looking back on it, right? Because I'm like, how the fuck did I survive this shit? I ended up getting addicted to methamphetamines, right, in high school, and I was that guy. Everyone's like, "Oh shit, hey, hit up Tommy, let's go, do this and that," and I was the guy, basically. And I'm not saying I was some like rich fucking drug dealer or anything, but like I always had it. So I always had people around me, and I always had the wrong types of people around me, right? So growing up, I never had a job. My first job was actually the military. 18 years old, I didn't graduate high school. When I went to MEPS, which is the military entry program, I weighed in at 50 kilos or 51 kilos, right? And I was 17 and a half or 18. I forget really. So that equals out to like 111 pounds. So, I joined the military. I hadn't have shit going for me. My friend, actually, John, um, he actually graduated. He came from a pretty well off family, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm joining the military." I said, "Shit, take me to the recruiters, man. I'll talk to them. Yeah, whatever. No big deal. I've got nothing going on, so let's just see what happens." And I ended up shipping out before my friend did, and he signed up before me. So I was like, "Hey, look, as soon as my drug tests clear, because there was a few weeks where they were testing me every week and waiting for all this stuff to clear before I go out there to join the military, because if you drug test at MEPS trying to get in, they either kick you out or your job prospects are limited, very limited. They're like, nah, fuck that. You're not going anywhere until you pass these drug tests." Cool. I stayed clean long enough for me to take, go. And I've been clean off of methamphetamines ever since. And I think I 100% I believe the military saved my life, basically, right? Because I was headed on the wrong path. But anyways, so I go take the ASVAB, which is kind of the test that you take to figure out what jobs you qualify for. And I qualified for every job, surprisingly, almost every job except for maybe like military intelligence and things like that. But I really wanted to join into infantry, right? Because I thought to myself, if I'm going to go join the military, my first few years should be what I thought was proper military. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go fight and I'm going to go pull some triggers, because that's kind of what I thought the military was, right? I didn't grow up watching military movies, but I watched, Full Metal Jacket, Black Hawk Down, Saving Private Ryan, and I'm like, they don't show anything else, right? So all I know is, let's go. I'm a fucking gunslinger, kick down some doors and handle my business. But it turns out I was color deficient with my reds and greens. So they're like, well, you can't fucking read a map as quick as you need to. So no, you can't join them. So I was like, okay, fine. What are my options? The recruiter said your options are administration, 88 Mike, which is a truck driver, or a medic. And I said, I'm not sitting behind a desk. That doesn't sound interesting to me. And I'm not driving a truck because I don't want to have to encounter IEDs as much as I've heard they've encountered. Because if there's one thing that I'm scared of is an IED, because you can't shoot back. What are you going to shoot back at? You get hit and you're hit, right? So I was like, fuck, man, medic. That wasn't my first choice at all, because I think to myself, why the fuck would I want to do that? That doesn't sound very, gung ho. But I'll tell you what, after I completed my training, I realized that this is an amazing job, because while I am a medic, I didn't get attached to a a surgical team. I didn't get attached to a hospital unit. I was attached to airborne infantry, an airborne artillery unit. So I said, hell yeah. And you know what they say, like if you're a medic, you're a shooter first. No one's hurt, you're a shooter. And I didn't know that until, you know, maybe a year into my term. And I really started to appreciate what it was to be a medic. Because I'll tell you what, when the infantry guys and the artillery guys and the military police guys had to go out and do some bullshit, I didn't, because I was the medic. They said, Doc, you chill, you hang out, you go do what you need to do, right? Because everybody wants to be friends with the medic, and it's very true. And till this day, like, you know, even though I'm not really a medic, you know, everybody that I still keep in touch with, man, it's always good times, man. They all love me, so that was good stuff right there. So I get to my job training, San Antonio, Texas, or I have to do EMT training and combat medical training. So, you know, surprisingly, I failed the EMT test twice. And on the third time, they're like, hey, man, if you don't pass this, you're out of, you know, combat medicine. And I said, you know, I started thinking to myself, man, that fucking sucks, because I have to tell like my family I failed this, and then I failed it again. And then they're telling me if I fail again, they're switching my whole job. I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to fail this. I love this shit. This is really what I want to do now. Third time is a charm, baby. I fucking took that thing and I passed it third time. But who knows? Maybe they're just like, damn, we need medics, man. It's 2007. You know, the war's getting rougher. Maybe they just like, fuck it, man. Go ahead. You passed. Move on. Continue on with training. And then all of a sudden, Ranger Regiment came to our where I was stationed for doing my medical training. They said, all right, who wants to be a Ranger medic? And I said, shit, that sounds awesome. You know, but I'm like 19 at the time, 18 maybe even. And I finished my combat medicine school. I ship off to airborne school because I'm prepping to go to a Ranger indoctrination program, which is a 4-week course to get into Ranger Regiment. And I have to mention that a Ranger regiment, a Ranger qualified person that has a Ranger tab is different from a tan beret. Okay. I was trying to get into a unit that was special operations and wore a tan beret. But you also have these people in the Army that have a Ranger tab. When I have to mention this because it is very important, but a Ranger tab does not mean that you're in a special operations unit. It just means that you're qualified to lead like infantry movements. I was trying to get into the unit that was a special operations. But unfortunately, at the time, I wasn't mature enough. And I made it through the 4 weeks. But at the end, there's a certain amount of people they let in, right? And I just wasn't one of those people, right? So during this course, you do land navigation, you shoot foreign weapons, or you shoot some foreign weapons. You learn how to breach doors. You learn how to fast rope off of helicopters. You know, we do all that stuff, but at the end, I just didn't make it through. And to this day, I'm like, fuck, man, what would have happened if I made it through? But anyways, I get orders to go to the 82nd Airborne Division. And to be honest, that was my third choice, right? It's either special operations, the 173rd Airborne Division, which is based out of Italy, or it's going to be the 82nd Airborne Division. Because if I'm going to do this, I want to be a part of some people that have a rich history. And I know that are very disciplined, and all three of those units can deploy anywhere in the world within 18 hours notice. And I took a lot of pride in that. I said, fuck yeah, man, that sounds awesome. Those are the type of people that I want to be around, because I want to be around people that take pride in what they do and feel like they're really making a difference. And if you go on the internet and you Google 82nd Airborne Division and type in some word like arrogant or cocky, everything you find out about them is, yeah, they're all fucking cocky and arrogant. And it's true, because we trained in a certain way, right? So I get to my unit, and 2007 comes along, and they say, all right, get ready. We're gearing up to go to the Triangle in Iraq. So that's Sadr City, Tikrit, I believe, and Baghdad. And we're going to be running convoy patrols and convoy security. And I said, fuck, man, the one thing I didn't want to do, because of all the stories that I've heard, was what we were going to do. So we're training for a good 3 or 4 months for the training cycle, and we're getting ready to go. orders change. A different battalion takes our deployment order, our dep order, and now we're going to Afghanistan. Boys, we're going on a ride. We're going to Afghanistan. We're going to the eastern border right by Pakistan, and we're going to shoot some shit. So I was like, okay, cool. I get ready for that. I get put in Bravo battery in my unit, and Bravo battery ends up doing, they end up gearing up to do a bunch of infantry shit, right? So I was like, all right, let's go. We're getting ready to go. I ended up getting moved to a different battery that has a different mission, but not luckily, but coincidentally, we were put in an area in Afghanistan that saw a lot of action, right? So like I was telling Ian, Watch Restrepo, the Outpost, Korengal, and you'll find some other documentaries on not Instagram but Facebook about the area we were in.
Sebastian Junger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sebastian Junger, exactly. Those guys, man, those combat journalists, man, ballsy fucking guys, right? They're out there doing exactly what the infantry is doing. All they have is a camera, body armor, and head protection, and they're out there doing exactly what some of us were doing. So we go out for a year, and I come back, and that pretty much ends my military career, right? I was 21 and a half, or I was 22. I had just gone back from Afghanistan. It was January 2010. So January 2009 to January 2010, I was in Afghanistan with 2 weeks off in the middle in August to go home for my birthday. Fucking crazy thing is I was ETS. I terminated my military contract, or I finished it in February 2010. So my reintegration with the world was a shitty reintegration because I had just come back from combat in one of the most dangerous places in the world at the time. 2009, fucking crazy year in Afghanistan, right? And my reintegration with the world was kind of fucked up, right? Because normally you go home for a month and then you come back and then you can start out processing. But I had so many days of leave saved up. So basically 2.5 days out of the month, you get to keep for leave, and you can save that. So if you go a whole year, you've got damn near 20 something days of vacation time. So I didn't go home for 2 years because the way my unit was set up, if you wanted to go on leave, they're like, fuck that, we're training. You're staying your ass here. I mean, they would let you go, but it was very discouraged because of the mission that we had at hand and because of the unit that we were. They wanted people to be there for every single training session. Did I think it needed to be like that at the time? Yeah, because it's like, that's all I knew. But looking back, I'm like, you guys didn't need me. There was someone that could have taken over for, a couple days. So I get back to my hometown February or March 3rd or something like that. So my time back in the States was very short. We got back January 26th. And I did just enough to clear all of the stuff I needed to clear with my unit, turn in gear, pay for gear that was missing or dirty, go to some trainings that kind of like teach you how to set up your disability and how to get in contact with the Veterans Affairs and stuff like that. I did all that, and I was like, fuck it, peace, you guys. I'm going home. I just spent 12 months in a combat zone, and it fucking sucked. But at the same time, it was fun. I'm going home. So that whole year, I kind of just like lost who I was, or maybe I just wanted to catch up with all the university and college fraternity frat boy shit that I didn't get to do because I was busy in the military. And I spent all of my money, all of the 30 grand that I had saved over deployment, on drugs and alcohol, right? And I'm talking about, we drank every day. There were some days where I was drinking, 3 weeks, 4 weeks straight. Partly because I was just happy to be home, right? I fucking made it back home, but partly because people died, right? And as a medic, it's not just like your close brothers dying. It's the people that are serving at the same forward operating base, the same combat outpost, women and children that were caught in the crossfire and took collateral damage. Like, man, the amount of dead fucking kids that I saw was fucking mind blowing, right? Because they don't train you for that. They
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
they don't teach you to say, hey, you're going out here, you might have to do a convoy. Fuck, I forget what they call it. Basically, we set up aid out of the forward operating base. But they didn't tell you that. They don't tell you that in training. They don't really tell you that when you're at your unit training either, because their sole mission is to make sure that you keep your service members alive, right? So there's a lot of stuff that like I was not prepared to see. Now I'm 18, 19 years old. Like, holy shit! Like, why do I have to see this dead baby? Why do I have to see this again? Why do I have to see it again? What's going on? But anyways, I get home and I party for basically 9 months straight, right? And I'm not doing shit but collecting this unemployment from our government, and I'm wasting all of it. And my wife was right next to me. She'd be like, "Yeah, it's true," because I was there fucking drinking with him and doing all these drugs with him. Um, But I mean, 21 years old, just saw a bunch of combat and a bunch of fucking dead people. It was just my way of
Just
getting by
coping
at
with
the
it, yeah.
time. Yeah, just my way of coping, because I still don't think I was mature at the time that I came back from the military, right? Um, so I spent a little bit of time trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I'm Filipino, right? So a lot of my family members are registered nurses. So like, oh yeah, no, go do registered nursing. You just, you basically what you did overseas, you were doing what emergency doctors do. So go do nursing. It's 4 years. You take a test and you make a bunch of money. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I've intubated. I've done minor surgeries. I've done sutures. I've done IVs. I've patched up, holes in many places. Um, and I've seen a bunch of weird shit, right? Like one
Yeah,
time we were
yeah.
in Afghanistan and we were telling the local national, hey man, we need you to pee in this cup. And he comes back and there's shit in the cup, like weird shit like that, right? Like, what the fuck is going on? And you're like 20 years old and you're trying not to laugh at the guy, right? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. But I'm like, oh my fucking God, man, the stories over there. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I try to go the RN route, the registered nurse route, and I'm like, like, yeah, I was good at some of these medical things, but at the same time, I so the military medicine and the civilian medicine are largely different, largely because of scope of practice, but also because of the environment, right? In hospital, you start cussing and start flipping out, you're fired.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
the military, if you start, doing stuff like that, people just laugh and we carry on with the mission, right? So I thought to myself, you know what, this I can get in a lot of trouble. I probably shouldn't do this right now. So I ended up getting into sports, and that's kind of how I found Ian, right? Um, I started working in combat sports because I was competing in combat sports. I've got a IBJJF World Masters Championship title, Abu Dhabi Grand Slam title. I went to London and won. I've won Long Beach International Open a bunch, and my wife competes also. So I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah, I'll get into sports. So I've been working in sports for the past 9 to 10 years, and I decided to take it to the next level, and I did a master's degree through um, Ulster University in Northern Ireland. And I was really proud of that because I have no undergrad, right? My experience kind of got me onto that program. They said, oh, okay, yeah, your experience is good enough. You've shown that competency and you've showed some prior learning. We'll take you on. So I was like, oh fuck yeah, man, dude, my first person in my family to get a master's degree. I don't even have an undergrad. Fuck yeah, let's do this. So I do that and I pass with this distinction. And I'm thinking in my head, like, how the hell did I do this? Right? How did I do this? So continue on with the sports nutrition, and then I ended up moving in 2020 at the end to Birmingham, England, to do a Master of Research with Wolverhampton. So I work with Walsall FC and staffs cricket, while also working with some kickboxers and Muay Thai fighters out of K-Star. And if you guys have been around Muay Thai long enough, you guys are probably familiar with K-Star and Damien Trainer. Very
Yeah.
big. Yeah, that fucking guy's
Big
awesome.
fan.
Matter of fact, he's one of the nicest guys. He's a badass. He's shorter than I thought I was the shortest person in the world. That motherfucker's shorter than me, right? And I got up with some of his guys for some of the title fights they were going through, and then I moved back to the States in September or October because the school that my son was going to called and said, "Hey, if you guys want to come back, you have to be here like in like 10 days to take this spot or some other kid's going to take it." And my kid loved that school. So I said, "Fuck that. We're moving. Go. Call the shit up. Call the movers. Pay for however much it costs to get all our shit moved out and let's go." Because my son loved that school and I would hate for my son to miss that opportunity. So we get back in September. And yeah, I just start getting back to work in sports. I start gearing up to compete at this year's World Masters, so try to win another world title. And I see that so Damian Maya, if any of you are familiar with Damian Maya, I'm under the Damian Maya lineage, right? So my purple belt comes from Damian Maya. One of Damian Maya's black belts is the first American black belt that Damian Maya ever gave a black belt to. And, coincidentally, the fucking guy is Force Recon in the Marine Corps, Special Operations. And me and him were all of a sudden, we're like best friends, right? Like, yeah, this is cool. So I find out he's in Eastern Europe. And all I said was, "Hey, man, when you're free, send me a DM." And he said, "Hey, hey, brother, how you doing? Greetings from this country in Eastern Europe." And he was like, "Hey, man, what are your qualifications? What have you done? What kind of deployments have you done?" And I said, "These are what I've done. These are the things that I'm trained at. These are the things that I excel at. These are some of the things that I did, but weren't necessarily my wheelhouse." And he's like, "Yeah, man, we can use you." And it's like, "Cool, sign me up. No questions asked. I'm going, whether my family likes it or not, or whether you guys are a little iffy, I'm going." Because
So Tommy, just let me ask you the question here, just briefly, just in terms of timeline. When did this exchange happen? Was this recently, or a year ago, or how long ago?
No, this is recent. This was March.
March of this year.
Yeah, okay. when the shit kicked off. So what happened was,
and so you had trained with this guy, this Damian Maya black belt. You had trained with him back in the US previously.
Yeah. He would come by when Damian Maya would come by for belt ceremonies and during his fights and stuff like that. So yeah, we were. He's actually Scottish. He's from Scotland, and I love to drink Scotch. So we got along very well, right? So we'd start talking, military careers and stuff like that. And then fast forward to March this year, he has to take one of his students back to Ukraine because he's Ukrainian and hasn't seen his family in a long time. So him and another Force Recon, Special Operations Marine, go back and they do their thing to make sure that he can get home safely. Now, a little bit of backstory about this guy, right? The Force Recon guy. He's got a foundation called the Overwatch Foundation, which I'll send you a link to. So maybe when you post the podcast, you guys can, tag the link and post it and all that stuff. Well, they were involved with the evac in Afghanistan last year and also Hurricane Ida. So I knew what they were doing was like some good stuff, not just some half-assed stuff. They were helping people evac from Afghanistan. They were helping people with Hurricane Ida.
And this was after the actual official evac happened, and then there was still people trapped in Afghanistan after the US and allied people or whatever had left, that the rest of them was still American citizens trapped there, and people with American passports and everything trapped in Afghanistan still that were left behind, and like your friend went in and got them out.
Yeah. So I don't ask too many questions. I don't know if he was directly involved with going out there. I might know. I might know. I might not know. Who knows? Yeah. But he helped out in that some of those operations. He might have just helped out financially. Who knows? And then Hurricane Ida also out in the south. I believe it was New Orleans. I believe I don't remember. And he was out there. And I said, "Yeah, sign me up."
So Tommy, you say sign me up, but so let's. You've given us a really comprehensive overview of your background, and I think it's an awesome story. And a few bells ring for me about someone finding purpose along the way. Joining the military was a purpose to get you off drugs and get you in a direction. When you came out of the military, then jiu-jitsu was a focus, and doing your masters was a focus. And it sounds like this is a new focus for you. But what's your life like now, like in California, before we talk about the Ukraine episode? So Um, are you working full time? Are you studying? What's life like in general for you in California after you moved from the UK back?
Yeah, life. I really can't complain. If some people probably ask me why the fuck would you go? Your life is amazing. My wife is away. She is amazing. She is not the sole bread earner, but she is the majority. She makes the majority, and we're very comfortable, right? We're able to do whatever we want to an extent, right? We want to eat here, we'll eat there. We want to travel here for holiday, we'll travel there for holiday. My son wants to do whatever activity. He wants to learn how to code at 8 years old. Fuck it, go learn how to code, right? I am in a very fortunate position. I actually dropped. I quit my professional doctorates through St. Mary's just because it sports not like being in the sports world, but not the athlete, has been fun, but it lost its meaning for me. It's not as fulfilling anymore because I've been doing it for 10 years behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes, but not being the focus. It's been always been other people. And I'm just like, I've realized that I'm sitting behind a computer way too much, and I hate it. I'm doing all these things, and I'm just like, I have the opportunity to make a lot of money, but I don't need to. And it's starting to lose that funness. It's starting to lose the meaning and purpose. So right now, my what I'm doing right now is I've been just buying a bunch of gear, getting ready to go overseas again. I haven't been overseas in over 10 years. I want to see if what I had over 10 years ago I still have. And when I come back, I don't plan on going back into working in sports. And maybe later on, but I plan on going back and forth.
Okay. So
yeah.
So do you want to go on this mission to Ukraine? Do you want to go on this mission to Ukraine because you feel that you have to fulfill a purpose for you, as in Tommy the individual? This is what you were born to do. Or are you going to Ukraine because you believe in what's happening in Ukraine at the moment, in terms of you believe that Ukraine should fight back to Russia? So what I'm trying to get at is this more about a political ideology, a kind of a overarching, I suppose, empathy from you? Or is it more like Tommy needs to fill this fucking hole in his life and he needs a meaning from this?
I have to be completely honest. It's both of them. First, I'm sure you guys have seen what's been going on, Mariupol, and Bucha, and all that, and that's just insane. It's completely wrong, right? Whatever's happening, for whatever reasons, homeboy Putin is over there and trying to take over that country and reabsorb it back into Russia, and killing all these people it's just fucking wrong, right? And I have a Polish friend that I met in England. We became really good friends because he had a child that was the same age as my kid, and we ended up playing football and basketball every day. And he was telling me that 2.5 million people have left Russia and have gone to Poland, and like there's obviously been other people going to other countries, but I mean, like, this isn't normal. This is not right. 2.5 million people having to leave their homes because it's been fucking destroyed. And I'm sure you guys have seen all the pictures of casualties just laying on the ground. It's completely wrong, right? And that's one of the reasons why I want to go out there, because the humanitarian side of this mission, I feel like not many people will do it, but these people need all the help that they can get, right? So I'm willing to. So I will go out there and help as much as I can. And to be honest, not me myself, but the foundation has collected so much medical equipment to bring there. It blows my mind how much money has been invested into this project that we're doing. Over 6 figures worth of stuff that we're going to be helping out with, right? That's insane. Like, I would never thought that I would be a part of anything like that. Like I just thought I'd go out there and help out when something crazy was happening. But we're going out there to drop off some supplies, help distribute supplies, help collect supplies while we're traveling to get there, and bring it over. And that's similar to what they were doing in March. Not only did they go drop off or take a friend to see their family, but along the ways they also collected supplies and brought them to who needed them, right? So
So,
there's the
so,
humanitarian.
so Tommy, in terms of that supply chain, then are you going to be supplying Ukrainian troops, or are you going to be supplying Ukrainian people, or Ukrainian, what's I suppose call them maybe like militia who've just started up fighting with the Ukrainian army? Which of those groups will you be supplying?
Yeah. Oh, let me think about that. So there are organizations out there. I think they're called territorial military units, where wherever you live, if you're an able body, you're not a female, a mother, a grandmother, or a child, you are now a part of the military.
Yeah.
Now these people were just, who knows, cooks, truck drivers, market operators, dentists, and all of a sudden now they're fighting the war. So primarily, we will be helping out those people that have, they just don't have the experience or the chops, or maybe they do have the
Yeah.
chops, but nobody knows yet. So, we'll be distributing stuff like chest seals, tourniquets, needle decompression kits, um, and then, helping out wherever we can help out there.
Will you be doing any sort of we'll say, because you speak about humanitarian stuff, but on top of that, will there be any sort of once you get there, will you be going on any sort of fighting patrols with the locals? Will you be doing any knowledge transfer about weapons handling or maneuvers, or fighting in urban environments? Will you spend a bit of time then pairing up with them, or is that to be confirmed? So is it going to be all humanitarian, or is it going to be humanitarian and fighting, or 50-50? How's it going to work without getting into
Well,
details?
yeah. Well, the primary mission would be to make sure that whatever we have gathered and collected and raised gets delivered to where it needs to safely and effectively, right? So that's the primary mission, because it would be such a shame if we have to tell these companies that have invested in us and donated to us that it didn't make it there, right? Because now the foundation will be on the hot seat of they're not reliable, and the last thing I want to be is considered unreliable. So that's the primary mission. Now the war are in certain areas of Ukraine, and will I be there? Who knows, right? But if the war comes to me, I will be there to pull triggers, right? Yeah.
So it's a bit like the UFC. Defend yourself at all times.
And defend yourself at all times, right?
So if shit goes down, you're ready to react.
Exactly. And then that's true, right? If it comes down to it, yes.
So let me ask you this question, Tommy. You're going to go there. It's in a combat environment. How does it work about getting armed? Do you bring weapons from the US? Do you go on a US military plane? Do you go on a commercial plane? How do you get armed? How do you get all your stuff when you get there? How do you get all your combat equipment, fighting order, anything you have? What sort of color DPMs will you wear? Will you be wearing black like military contractor civilian type stuff? Like how is it all gonna? What are you gonna look like? What's Tommy gonna look like?
So Tommy's definitely not going out there with any patterns on his on his body, right? So I'm not going there to represent America. I'm not going out there to represent Ukraine. So what I'll be wearing is what you would probably I'm just going to go out there in clothes that can handle the terrain and the mission, right? So whether that looks like hiking clothes or undercover clothes, I don't fucking know, right? But I'm going out there dressed like I'm gonna go on a hike. Right? I'm not wearing any patterns. I'm not wearing any American flags or anything like that. And now, as far as the weapons goes, I'm not going out there with a weapon at the time. I'm not going out there with any body armor. But what I found out was that the people that I'm going out there with were able to make some connections with diplomats, people in the Foreign Legion, those territorial military units that have been popping up in those different regions in Ukraine. So I don't ask these questions because I just assume that when we get there, things will be taken care of. But I'm almost positive whatever we need, we'll be able to get now. Because you have to understand, they were just there and they made enough connections and met enough people to go back out there, right? And have a mission to go out there with. So when I get there, who knows? I might not ever have to put any plate carriers on. I might never have to pull a trigger. But I know for sure when I get there and I need to, I'll have whatever I need with me.
And how long do you reckon you'd be there for, Tommy?
Man, that's a great question. That's something that I don't even know, right? So, I don't reckon I'll be out there for more than a few months, right? But it could be as short as 1 week. Who knows? Okay. If we accomplish what we need to accomplish, and there's nothing left for us to be nothing left to be done, I'm positive we won't stay there any longer than we need to. But I'm very positive that if we need to stay there for 3 months, the people that I'm going with will be ready to stay there for 3 months. Now, I'm going there with one carry-on bag. They said we're going as slick as possible. Nothing that will put us under the hot seat, nothing that'll put us on the radar. And if we need to evac very fast, we have our go bags, right? So that's just to give you an idea of the severity and the kind of, I don't know, randomness of what we're doing. If we need to be there for just 1 week, fine. If we need to be there for 3 months, I'm also very fine with that. My wife is probably not going to be fine with that, but I understand what we're going to be doing out there.
So do you have a job, Tommy? You're working currently that you have to quit, or do you work for yourself, or what's going to happen there?
Yeah, I work for myself, and I've worked for myself for the past 10 years. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm burnt out, right? Because all the ideas that I have to bounce off myself, and I have to validate those ideas. And that takes a lot of brain power. At least for me, it does. So I work for myself, but I was able to find a way to get into Wildcard Boxing Club in January. So I've been working with Freddie Roach and some of his boxers, and I've also been working with some of my own private clients. And I still have clients that I've been working with since before I left for England and before I did my first masters in 2019, right? So I just work for myself, but they all, and if they listen to this podcast, they're all going to be fucking mad at me, right? But they all have the idea that I'm going to Dublin to compete in the IBJJF International Open, which was the original plan, right? So that was the plan starting in February. It's like, all right, I'm going to Dublin. It's going to be my first competition in 3 years. The last two that I did were in 2019. I won them both. I think that I still have a good chance to be competitive. So the plan was compete in jiu-jitsu and enjoy life here in sunny California. It was just like 35 degrees Celsius, 36 degrees, and it was blazing hot for us. And I was going to use that Dublin competition to prep me for World Masters in Vegas. So I had my plan already set. And I was like, okay, this is my weight now. I'm going to do this Dublin at 63 kilos, 63 and a half. And then I'm going to go back down to where I won my world title and compete at 57 kilos. So I was going to diet for the next 6 months to do it properly, because it's same day weigh-ins. You weigh in, you hop right onto the mat. You don't have time to rehydrate. And I was going to do that because I remember every time that I competed at 57 kilos, I kind of just maintained a certain weight and then hit the bathtub for like 3 or 4 hours to make weight. But I was planning on doing it properly now that I have all this background knowledge and shit. But then we decided it's time to go to Ukraine.
And so when you go to Ukraine, do you get paid for it, or is it all off your own back?
So the foundation that I'm going under is paying for everything. They've already booked everything, and we haven't talked about the pay. I was going out there because I felt like, one, I needed to satisfy in this craving of combat, right? Because anyone that's been to combat, I wouldn't say anyone, but a very high proportion of people that have been to combat want to go back because they know that when you're there, life is simpler. life is very, very simple. Shoot in that direction. Don't shoot your battle buddies. Don't shoot your brothers. And then that's basically it. Sleep when you can. Smoke a cigarette if that's your thing. And that's basically life deployed, right? You go on a patrol, walk up a mountain, walk on a street, hop in a vehicle, hop out, shoot in a certain direction. Um, yeah. What was the question? Sorry, I was thinking
No,
about war.
no. I was just wondering about the like
Oh, the pay, the pay,
the
right?
remuneration for it. Like,
Yeah.
do you get
Yes.
paid for it? Like, because some people might think, oh, he's only going because he's going to get like 200 grand for like 2 months. People have this idea that if you go and be some sort of mercenary, or to use one of a better word, that you get like a half a
Yeah.
million dollars for doing it and so on. So some people
So
might think you were just doing it for the money.
it's true. I have a lot of friends that are contracting. One of my best friends that actually is kind of like helping me stay calm because he's been contracting and he was with the Marine Corps. He makes a lot of money. He goes and does certain missions and works for certain clients that he cannot talk about. We're really good friends and he can't even tell me where he's going, right? That's how tight operational security is for the company that he works for. Um, so mercenaries, contract workers, Department of State workers, they get paid very well. Some of them upwards of $2,000 a day, right? So it's true, they do get paid. As far as remuneration for me, last time they went out, some of the people that one of the people that went out with them, because there's only two people, did get paid, and they told me a number, and I will likely get paid also. But it's my friend that I'm going with, and it's the mission that we have in mind. That like, if I get paid, that's fine, that's great. I won't say no, right? But I've never asked like, hey man, you gonna pay me? You know, like some people might think that's stupid, right? But I like I said, my family's well off now. We don't need money. I don't really ask for it because I know what I'm doing is going to be very fulfilling. I'm going to be helping out these people that really need the help, that have never been in the military before, that are out now. They're fighting a military that has drones, missiles, tanks, and shit like that. And I mean, just going out there and seeing what could my possible career opportunities be afterwards is enough for me. But there will be a conversation with the people I'm going with about pay, and I'll talk about that. But I to be honest, I haven't asked.
And Tommy, some people might think or ask the question: if you feel like this hole exists in your life, or this thing needs to be addressed, why not just go back into the military? Why go and do something like this? Why not go back into a structured force where you can get retrained, you can get all the equipment, you get your pay, there's some degree of, I suppose, structure to it. You're fighting for your own country. Why not that instead of going to Ukraine to do this?
Oh, that's a great question, because there's a commitment that you have to have with that, right? Then you might not be stationed where you want to be stationed. You might not get the job that you want to do, and you might not be working with people that you want to work with, right? So if the military was a little bit more lax and said, yeah, you can choose your own duty station, your own unit, and you can guarantee a job, then I'd say,
That's
yeah.
never happening.
But that's never gonna fucking happen, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that with at least with this, and so my plans after this are to go into protection,
Yeah.
right? In austere environments. I don't want to do anything stateside. That doesn't interest me at all. I have no interest of guarding someone's house, some billionaire's house, right? I need a little bit more than that. So my plans are to go into kind of the protection side overseas. So I just started a route mapping course yesterday, and there's going to be some more courses that I'll be going through and getting my feet wet, getting some experience, and getting some background knowledge. But like, I can't really focus on that stuff until I get back. So everything that I've been focusing up to now has basically been get all my shit ready, manage my stress, because I've noticed that my stress for the past 3 weeks have been very high, a lot higher than normal. I'm a little bit more agitated. I get a little bit more agitated, a little bit quicker, I'm a little bit more stressed. I'm not sleeping as well because I know what's going to happen very soon, very very soon. Like, yeah, um, yeah,
Yeah, which is not surprising. Like you want to be a fucking dummy not to be stressed. Like, let's be honest about it. Like, if you're not stressed, I actually think this is where some people think that, oh, all stress is bad. But I think if you don't have a degree of stress, like if you, I think this is when you do combat sports, you get a feeling of this because combat sports are
yeah,
different than going out and having a game of soccer or racing against somebody. And we've all done jujitsu, boxing, kickboxing here, so we all know what it's like to have someone want to choke her fucking head off, punch us in the face, whatever it might be. And
yep,
I think that if stress is good to get a certain level of arousal to protect you, so I think it's good. But you're right too. You don't want to find that balance where you don't want to be burnt out before you go as well. But
yeah,
yeah, it's completely understandable.
yeah. And you
Here,
know what? One of the biggest things that I'll never forget is one time, like some commander, or it might have been my cousin that was in the Marine Corps, said, "Complacency kills."
mm,
Right? So as soon as you relax, as soon as you feel like you're out of the shit, man, that's when people get fucked up. And
yeah,
I don't want to lead up to these next. I don't want to leave too relaxed, right? I don't want to leave thinking that the enemy is never going to get me, right? Because I play those scenarios out in my head every single day. Like, okay, what happens when we get to this part of the border? What happens when we get here? What happens when we're here? We don't have weapons. What are we going to do? Um, I was talking to a security specialist that was in Iraq in 2003, a private military, and has been going back and forth to Lebanon, Beirut, South Africa, Ukraine, Brazil, Mexico for the past 30 years. Obviously, not all those countries in the past 30 years,
yeah.
but those are the countries he's been to. And he was telling me, I was talking to him last week, and he said, "Hey man, watch out when you're using your cell phone. Don't bring it because there's drone strikes and they're catching signals and sending out drone strikes, right?" So I'm thinking in my head like, okay, how am I going to make communications back in the States? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Um, it's just like, these are things that you have to worry about, but if you don't go out to these kind of areas, these are things that you'll never have to worry about, right?
Mm.
So I've been playing a lot of scenarios back in my head. Go ahead, Kieran.
I was just about to say, especially when technology is in combat zones has changed since you were there, with the advancements in drone technology and surveillance tech is so much more advanced since you would have been in Afghanistan. And then when you were in Afghanistan, it was an insurgency scenario versus now against an advanced military that has their own base of operations, their own, the Russian military isn't the Taliban. It's a different type of adversity, different category of adversity. Not that one of them is more difficult or than the other. Like, they both were obviously fucking dramatically difficult combatants to have as adversaries, but just the differences in tech, I'd imagine alone is an interesting challenge to have to be navigating at the moment.
Yeah, and that's very true. I'm glad that you brought that up because one thing that I failed to mention was the war in Afghanistan was, and my buddy mentions this also on the Sean Ryan podcast that he was on. Sean Ryan is a Navy SEAL or retired Navy SEAL, and they also did a podcast, I think in March, and I'll link you guys to it so you guys can get a little bit
That'd be
background.
good, yeah.
And yeah. And the war in Afghanistan was 360, right? You don't know where they're coming from, whereas this war is a little bit different, In Afghanistan, we didn't do too much fighting in the wintertime because the terror, those people that are doing bad things in Afghanistan didn't really have the means to be out when it's brick ass cold. It's Afghanistan. We're in the mountains. It snows, right? They don't really have the means to engage in combat. Whereas, like you said, Kieran, now we're fighting this military that has technology, that has vehicles, that has all types of weapons. And the interesting thing is that we kind of know where they're coming from. Obviously, we don't know if they're going to hit us with a drone or an IED, but we know that if we do go to war, that they're going to be coming from the east, right? Because that's where they are. Whereas Afghanistan, it's the Wild West. It's just, they come from anywhere, and they can come from very close proximity to you because there's no uniform. right? So it's a very different war. It's a very different setup, and it's nerve wracking at times because you sit and think, man, you know, just just 6 weeks ago, I wouldn't be able to tell you if I were to go to that part of the world, I wouldn't be able to tell like who's in a Ukrainian uniform, who's in a Russian uniform, just because I didn't really pay attention to those things. And now I'm going out there and I'm going to find out very fast how to delineate or differentiate between one or the other because I'm going to have to very fast, adapt very fast.
There's a point that you were mentioning a minute ago, and this will resonate with both you because of the jiu-jitsu, but that awesome documentary Choke at the very beginning, the Hicks and Gracie documentary, you know, from the 90s. And at the very beginning, the opening scene is like Hickson says that fear and intelligence are very closely related. And he was kind of like putting to bed this idea that he wasn't afraid, you know, and that was his, the fact that there was an anxiety there and a fear there facilitated sharper preparations and more attention to detail and care in the preparation. Because you said that phrase "complacency kills" is very apt, you know.
Absolutely.
I think it's so true, Karen. Just on that point, I think it's so true for everything. Like people say to me, I've been doing jiu-jitsu like for a long time now, and you know, and still as a black belt, people say to me, as a newly minted black belt, people go, "Oh, you must be like so comfortable doing jiu-jitsu." I'm like, I still get nervous driving to the gym because you're engaging in a combat art, even though it's amongst friends. I don't care if you're a white belt or another black belt. I'm fucking equally afraid of everybody every time I get on that mat. It's you can't be complacent. Or I do boxing like once a week, and when we go at the end at sort of 50 minutes into the session, right, lads, mount guards in, we're going to do a bit of sparring, and I'm sparring with mates all between 35 and 45, and I fucking nearly shit my pants every time because without that stress or that nervousness, I'm going to get fucking lit up. So I think to the point that Tommy's made earlier on, what you're making there, Karen, you have to have that. And I think too many people coast through life having not enough stress to stimulate what's happening. And then they get into these environments in workplaces, independent of combat sports. Oh, I didn't realize I got made redundant. Now I've got no job, or I didn't future-proof for this, or I didn't see that person white-ant me at work, or whatever it might be. Complacency, I just want to reiterate that. I've seen so many people be complacent and then their whole world just gets pulled out from underneath them, and it's like to fall into fucking hell, a personal hell.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I don't want. I don't want to be the guy that's complacent that gets my group fucked up, right? Like, I will eat my, that'll eat me up inside for the rest of my life, because there were times in Afghanistan where people were relying on you and you couldn't do anything, right? Like it just not because you weren't good enough, but just because like that there was just no way to do anything, right? So that was a fucked up thing. Yeah, that was a fucked up thing about being a medic, right? Because you see like the combat side, and then you also see the fucked up, like, oh man, my friends are dying or the local nationals are dying, and you have to either help them or you have to find out a way to like compartmentalize what is about to happen because you can't help them.
So Tommy, you spoke earlier on about like in Afghanistan, some of the crazy things you saw, which no training course can prepare you for, seeing dead bodies, dead kids, crazy scenarios, not to mention the guy shitting in the cup when he was supposed to piss. Like it's classic kind of black comedy, that you get in the military when shit's going on, How are you going to prepare for that this time? Are you going to do anything preventively before you go that's going to try and get your head in that space? How are you going to look after your own mental health prior to?
Oh yeah. I've been reading a lot lately on catching up on my medical procedures, right? Like I said, are we going out to pull triggers? I don't know, but I know for sure we're going to be in a conflict area, right? And I know for sure we're going to be making sure that some of these supplies get to where they need to, right? And I'm not a part of the people behind the scenes taking care of all that, right? So I don't know exactly where they're sending me. I don't know exactly where we're going, right? So I've been reading a lot. I've been fortunate enough to be around some very good medics in my military career. My physician's assistant, kind of like the person that oversaw my platoon. I was a medical platoon sergeant, so the guy that kind of like signed off on all of our diagnoses, all of our prescriptions, made sure that we were trained up and ready to go, was in 7th Special Forces Group, right? So he went through the 18 Delta course, which is the Special Forces Medical Sergeant, which is damn near the best training you can get for combat medicine. These guys excel when they leave and end up going to med school or physician's assistant or starting businesses that are very successful just because of how rigorous their training is. So he was able to get me to get training with 7th Special Forces Group, and he's also able to get me into cold weather medicine and mountain medicine with the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center, right? So I kind of have the idea of what I need to read up on and relearn. So what I've been doing to make sure that I can kind of manage my stress is making sure that I just do my best. I do my best as far as, you know, saving somebody's life if I need to. But as far as managing the stress, you know, man, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know, because I was never really good at managing stress. You know, recently though, I've been trying to actively get better at thinking before I speak, because I kind of, you know, growing up and then coming from military and being military, all I know is whatever the first thing that pops into my head is what I say, right? So
If you find the
I've
answer
been,
to that problem, Tommy, let me know, because I still have that at 44.
yeah, for sure, right? I don't think it's ever going to leave me, but I have to admit, like lately, because I do have a son and he picks up on a lot of things that I do, I have to learn how to breathe and not react immediately. A little bit more along the lines of just sitting there and letting that my thoughts marinate in my head before I say them. But as far as stress, you know, I have no idea how I'm gonna go out there and handle the stress. Maybe it's looking at a photo that I get to bring from my home, or maybe I'll have more communication with the states than I think I will have, and I'll just, whenever I feel stressed, I'll just give my family well, actually none of my family knows I'm going except for my wife and my mom, but I'll give my wife a call. Like my son doesn't even know I'm going, right? He's 8 years old. He thinks I'm going to Dublin to compete. Um, Partly because I don't want him to have that stress of knowing I'm going, but also because of operational security. If I tell him I'm going here, he's 8 years old. He might tell his teacher. He might tell his friends. His friends might tell their parents. And now there's a small degree of compromise, or not compromise, but you know, there's a little bit of yeah, we've been compromised basically. If somebody finds out, we've been compromised, right? So the way I'll manage stress is, yeah, good question, man. But I'll have a better idea when I get out there, right? Because I really have no idea where I'm going to be going, who I'm going to be around. But who knows? Maybe I'll be drinking with a bunch of Ukrainians, and that'll be great, you know.
As a recommendation, just because speaking of stress, and also because of what you were talking there about letting your thoughts marinate before you speak, there's a unbelievable little book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was, in case you hadn't come across it before, it's a Austrian. He was a Jewish Austrian psychologist who ended up in a concentration camp for 5 years. And this was a book he wrote after getting out of the camp. And it was basically, he was talking about how he managed the suffering of the concentration camps, because he was a doctor. So he kind of managed to, part of what allowed him to stay alive was because of his role and in terms of helping the other inmates. And so that there's a particular line in that where he says, this is what reminded me of it, is that the topic of conversation, but also that line about letting our thoughts marinate, is that he said this brilliant line where he said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is your freedom to choose. So between stimulus and response is a space, and in that space is your choice, basically, of what next. And it's an awesome little book, and it's really, you probably read in a few hours, and it's just so fucking rich, such a powerful read. But do you mind if I, building on that with Ian, if I was to finish with just a couple of like related kind of human questions into relation to what we were just talking about? And it's the first one is in relation to like just like you said there, around your family, and how do you, and I'm just thinking about this from someone, because I've never talked to someone, I've talked about a lot of people who've come back from combat, but I've never talked to someone just before they went. And I'd be very curious, and I'm sure people who are listening to this will be as well, at how it is, given the fact that you're in a family circumstance, a wife and kids you really love, and how do you weigh up your love and commitment to them with the risks of volunteering to go to this high risk situation? How do you think that through, or weigh that up, and how does that, what does that thought process kind of look like?
Oh man, that's a question right there, right? That is a that's a damn good question. And to be honest, I'm not sure how I weighed it out, how I compared the two, because when I found out that my friend was there, instantly my thought was, I have to help him. I have to help them, you know. Um, but I think when I married my wife, she kind of knew what she was getting into. She kind of knew that I was a little sporadic like that, and I'm very patriotic. Is that the right word? I'm not sure if patriotic is the right word, but I have very strong feelings towards certain things. And you know, I think my buddy Mark's, put it the best, man. If he knew that he had a chance to help them out, but didn't do it, and then they get fucking hammered, then for the next, 10 years from now, he's not going to really be able to be okay with himself, because he knew that even though he's not going there to potentially fight, pull triggers, he knows that he's able to do something to help them out. And I think I kind of fall along those lines too, where I'm just like, you know, I know that I don't have to go out there, but I know what I'm good at, right? I'm not good at many things, but the things that I'm good at, I think that I'm very good at those things, right? Um, so just knowing that I could go out there and help was kind of enough. And when I told my wife I was going, she was very disappointed that I didn't tell her sooner. But I didn't tell her until I got the green light. Okay, I had talked to them. I had said, I'm ready to go if you're ready to take me. And I kind of just waited for the actual green light. You're going, your ticket's bought, you know, make sure your passport's good, and don't wear a bunch of American flags. So I didn't tell her until I got that green light. And she, what's funny is that she's like, she told me there and then she'll never tell me no, right? If I want to do something, she'll never tell me no, and she knows exactly, what my skills are and what I'm capable of. Um, she just wished that I would have told her sooner. But in my head, I was thinking, if I'm not going, I don't want to tell you I'm going yet, right? Because I don't want you thinking in your head for the next 2 weeks about something that's not going to happen, or that ends up not happening. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I waited very to the last minute to tell her. I hope I answered your question, man. But yeah.
But it's the kind of thing that I say an answer like that, there isn't going to be there's not going to be any one like rational way that's like a definite way of mapping that out, because it's like I think just even psychologically, we decide what we're going to do, and then on a kind of emotional, unconscious, subconscious level, and then later on we articulate a rationality for why it is we did, but we just made the decision, and now we're trying to explain what it is. So I was just curious at how you were thinking about it. And then in that relation as well, like you mentioned earlier on, the kind of difficulty that you had reintegrating after the previous combat experience, and how difficult that process was. And obviously you're in a total different situation now. You're much more mature. You've had way more life experience. You have a different support network now than you had then with your wife and the kid and everything. But had you thought about that scenario of thinking about the reintegration, and even thinking ahead to that point of like what would was there any thoughts that you had on that, basically, given the fact that it was a difficult scenario the last time?
Oh, 100%. I think about it every day of how I am going to feel when I get back, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head and said that I do have this amazing support system at home, and I am much older than I was when I deployed the first time, and I am a bit more mature than I was, 12 years ago. Now, I think the biggest difference is I've already been to combat, and I've already seen that. I've been shot at. We were, in Afghanistan. We were there for the first elections, and that day was fucking hectic, right? Like, it was probably some of the longest battles we've had. Um, so I've experienced some certain things that I will be able to carry with me there, and also like when I get back, I know that I'll have a life here. Like when I got back the first time, I didn't have a life. I didn't come
Mm,
back to a life. I came back and I created this life of like drugs and alcohol. But I know that when I get back, I have a son waiting for me. I've got a 8-month-old dog that's currently like in school right now, so she'll be at school for the next 5 weeks, learning a little bit of protection work and obedience. And I have a wife that I get to come back to that I've been married for shit 11, 12, I don't know, over 10 years, right? So I'll just be happy to come back. Now, hopefully, I'll come back and I will not have to pull triggers, or I'll go out there and not have to pull triggers, right? Go out there on this humanitarian and help out some good people, and I'll come back and everything will be okay. I'll get ready to gear up for the next one. But in the event that I do have to pull triggers, do this, do that, do a search and rescue, evac somebody out of a bad area, or plug some holes in someone that got shot up. On the way back, I know that my wife will be there for me to make sure that everything's okay. Like I said, when I came back the first time, I just came back for myself. I came back, I had a bunch of money, right? That's what my deployment was like. I did my thing, come back, I have a bunch of money. But now this time, I have a wife. I have a wife that I can hang out with, go out with, kill some time with. But I didn't have that the first time, and I think that was one of the fucked up things. Was I came back and I didn't have like purpose. I just had death and life. So when I come back, what I'm hoping is that I just come back and I get right back into the swing of things of training, 4 or 5 times a week, and then waiting for the next call. But in the event that I do come back and some shit hits the fan and I do come back, I think right now I'm in a better position to get the support that I need. Right. So like back then when I came back, I was 21. I didn't think I needed support. I'm a young gunner. Like I'm good. I can handle this shit. But now I understand that, yeah, you can do things by yourself, but there are people that are specialists that can help you do these things better than if you were to do them by yourself. So, and my wife is really good at finding those kind of people, and she's very good at paying those people to help us out, right? So I know that when I come back, I'll have the support that I need, uh, and I hope it doesn't get to the point where I come back and I revert back to 2010, right? That's one thing I don't want, because that I had very bad times in 2010. I had horrible times, right? Like a lot of bad stuff. I did a lot of bad things that I don't want to repeat. And I think just knowing that in my head, like, hey, I can't let that thing happen again when I come back from this one. So if I need to find support from someone, I think, who knows, right? I won't know until I get back, but I think I'm mature and um intelligent enough to seek out the help this time when I come back.
Mm. And in terms of, like you mentioned there, like even if I feel like I need to ask this because you mentioned earlier on, and I saw a lot of footage from the place, and even independent of needing to actually partake in a combat scenario, there's still going to be potential exposures to the kind of stuff that's, like you mentioned, bucha, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And you see the shit that went on there, just the what looked like massacre scenarios, mass graves, people tied up, hands behind the back with plastic, shot in the back of the head, lined up, just execution, mass execution. And then to see that kind of crap, even independent of actually partaking in combat, just exposure to that kind of stuff, and maybe especially with your skills, partaking in helping out people who've been injured, etc. There's a lot more going on in a war zone than just the fighting bit, the action movie stuff. Like there's, so and I suppose, and you're going in with a new filter, a new lens to view this. That if you do come across this kind of stuff, independent of combat or even with combat, that you're going to be interpreting all this stuff in a very different way than you previously had, because you know why you're going, you're choosing to do this, so you can imagine it will be very different.
Yeah, as a medic, you're very good, and I think I mentioned earlier, at compartmentalizing a lot of the things that you see, right? Missing limbs, missing head, dead friends, dead kids. I mean, crazy shit, right? We got hit with white phosphorus one time. I was taking a shower, and all of a sudden I hear a big boom, the walls shake. I walk outside and the ground's on fire because we just got hit with white phosphorus, and I'm butt ass naked, running to my gear to throw all my shit on to get ready. I've seen mass casualties where a CH-47, a Chinook, got hit in the tailgate, and the rocket exploded and hit 14 people, and those 14 people went to my forward operating base, and I was a sergeant of guard that night, because I was an NCO. I was in charge of some of our soldiers in my unit that were pulling guard, and I hear on the radio like, "Hey man, fucking Mascal, Doc, get to the aid station." And I'm asking on the radio, "Hey, I'm sergeant of the guard tonight. Like, can I even leave my station right now?" And there's like, "Doc, we'll get someone to replace you. Get the fuck down there, help the other unit out." And I go there, and there's fucking, oh man, jeez. Just like people like screaming and yelling and stuff like that. It's like you'll never forget, like all these people screaming and yelling. It's fucking dark. You have to maintain like noise and light discipline, so you can't really turn on all the lights, but you can turn it enough to get by. You have NVGs, and you've got like headlamps with like red light, but you can't really see shit. So these are like, that was a crazy experience for me. Like, I'm 20 years old. I see 14 people like all bleeding out, people with their assholes blown out, people with missing legs, and people like screaming and shit. So like, you just have to learn how to put that shit in a box, right? So when I go out there, and let's say I end up going to these places where it's like Bucha or Buka, like, I don't know how to say it either, and there's just bodies all over the place. That's just what it is. That's what I signed up for, and those are some things that you have to go out there knowing that there's a potential that you're going to see that, and you have to figure out what's the best way for you to manage that, whether that's by yourself or with somebody, whether that is compartmentalizing it, never speaking about it, but just playing it in your head, or talking about it as much as possible, which I thought was a weird strategy, because when I was speaking to a psychologist when I was first being evaluated for PTSD, they wanted to just talk about all the bad incidents. And that never really worked out for me. That was never a really good strategy for me to kind of work around these things that I saw. And come to find out, like a couple years later, when was that? I think like last year, I took the time to speak with a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm not sure what their qualification was, but we talked about some of these things, and they were like, what happened when you got rated for this, disability, and you had PTSD, and why did you stop going? I was like, well, the lady just kept telling me to talk about these certain incidents that I didn't want to talk about, and that's why I stopped going. And interestingly enough, the new psychologist or professional that I was working with was saying that is a very outdated method. Like, we don't do that anymore. So maybe I just, when I come back, I just talk to these psych professionals that are a little bit more up to date, that kind of know the new methods of helping people manage these things. So yeah, maybe that's something that I do to help me when I get back in and reintegrate with the world. Well, who knows? Maybe I get back and they say, hey, we have another date, or hey, this guy needs, some security, a security detail. Do you want to go back out or go to X country? Or and then I don't have enough time to think about it, and I just go. Like I have no idea. To be honest, I really have no idea what's going to happen when I get back.
It's interesting, Tommy, to hear you to talk about your experiences over the last hour or so, and obviously it's a very emotional, thing to recall for you, and it's an emotional area to dig into. So first of all, I appreciate you doing that, because I know it's not easy. But second of all, when I hear you speak, it makes me think about, because Kieran and I both talk, we both read a lot about, authoritarian regimes or shit that's gone on in the past and so on. And I think your stories, what we're seeing in Ukraine, but then also we see what's going on in the world, where people are fucking screaming at people over a mask, or people are screaming about each other over a gender pronoun, or, you were misgendered, or, this person said this, or some person inferred this. You think to yourself, on the scale of the continuum of the shit in this world, from down here to the stuff that you're talking about, to up here about screaming about a mask, you wonder about like how society is focused on these polarizing things, when really we should be more worried about the real stuff up here, as opposed to like, someone didn't put their pronouns after their name on LinkedIn and it's a travesty because they didn't do that, and it just makes me think about, not that I used to think that like everything was important, but as I get older, I think actually, well, some things just fucking really aren't that important at the moment. Other things are more important than some of the stuff that you're talking about. Is some of the really important things that are happening, because I think we can all watch the news and become desensitized to it. But you're talking there about firsthand experience on the ground, seeing this shit right in front of you. This is not like skipping through Twitter or skipping through BBC World Service on an app, or looking at, things flashing up on Fox, because I think we become disassociated with these things because it's just another newsreel over and over again, this 24-hour news cycle. But what you're talking about there is the reality of what's going on. And I think it's very powerful to hear you talk about.
It can be it's real life outside of our unbelievably comfortable bubble in this.
Exactly, yeah.
The kind of the Western world, and that's what this war is such a wake up call, because it's on the borders of Europe. It's just a wake up call to the reality of like most of the world lives under an authoritarian or totalitarian regime. That's most of the world. And there's violence taking place a lot of places, and this is like a reality, to a wake up call to that freedom and prosperity and safety are no guarantees for any of us, and this is like a wake up call in Ukraine for the rest of the democratic world, So yeah. Thanks very much for having this conversation with us, Tommy. This was fucking unbelievably insightful, and it was very, 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 very interesting. And I can't help but wish you best of luck in your preparations, and with you and your colleagues when you're going away doing this mission, because it's an admirable task to be going away where this shit is, going to this shit to do some good there. Like, so I props to you, man. You have nothing but my respect.
Yeah, right on. I appreciate that. It means a lot, and I want to say thank you for inviting me and helping me share not only my experiences, but what I plan on doing out there on the humanitarian side. To be honest, it was great. This one was smooth for me because sometimes when I have to talk to some people, it has to be like sports and science and nutrition and stuff like that, and there's so much nuance in that stuff that one thing can be taken out of context very easily, whereas this is just like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're gonna do, and this is what I can say, and that's basically it. You can't argue with me about it because you're not doing it, and no one's right or wrong or anything like that. But yeah, this was a great podcast. This was amazing to jump on and share this time with you guys. It was great.
I especially appreciate your honesty, like the in the circumstances in which you were genuinely uncertain about something and you didn't know. You said that you weren't as. I really appreciate that, because because it's like, I can imagine in circumstances where it's such a big decision that it could be very easy for people to feel like they have to provide some kind of a certainty or some kind of justification with a kind of a certainty. But I really, really, really appreciate the kind of the expression of genuine honesty around certain areas of ambiguity that you have still, because this isn't a totally, like, rationality has a place, but there's a time and a place where rationality breaks down, and humans, we're not logical, rational computers. Like so the fact that there was these places that you could get to and you say, look, man, I don't know, like, that's fucking, with such a big decision. I really appreciate that honesty, man. That's fucking awesome.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. If I don't know it, I don't know it. Right.
Excellent. Tommy, we'll leave it there because we know you have to go off doing some training. So, yeah, really appreciate your time. And I want to echo Kieran's comments, and yeah, keep your head down.